Well, you know, right behind us is a beautiful picture. I'm not sure where the so-called Magic Mountain is, but I am so pleased from the last panel to learn so much about the magic of some of the substances that were addressed earlier. Is everybody on the panel that we're hoping?
James, this is Chandrakant Salunke, President, SME Chamber of India.
Great.
Allow me to start my video. It's not allowing me.
That would be Carl or Hazel here. Just if you could, 1 second, let me introduce the panel, if you would, please.
Perfect.
Before you start, and then we'll get to the questions. And how long a video is it? Can I ask how long a video you have there to show us? Plan into this?
You're asking me?
Yes, sir. How long is it so I can plan at what point in the program we can add it?
No, I'm just now joined now.
Oh, the video. I'm sorry, the video. I thought you were showing a video.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
video is not a...
Hazel, excuse me. Sorry for the misunderstanding. Yes, Hazel or Carl, if you could allow our guest to get access to his camera for him to see, and also if we could drop off Anand, who did a great job with Abby last time around. Welcome, Devin, and welcome, Thomas. Why don't we go around, because we've got a little bit of time on this particular panel, a little bit more than an hour to talk about new economy, workplace safety, and some of the ESG specific to labor laws that we want to. Why don't we go around? Thomas, you can start to introduce yourself and your background and why you're here today.
Well, yeah, thank you. And it's an honor to be here on this panel. I'm sitting right now in Heidelberg in Germany. I'm a human business architect and also an executive at Allianz, the insurance corporation. We're working as an agile transformation coach, helping the corporation in its agile transformation or to become, hopefully, eventually a human business. So my vision is actually to help establish human business as the new global norm by the year 2030. So we'll see how far we get.
Great, welcome, and thank you. What was your PhD in, may I ask?
It's in international relations, international studies.
Did you do it at Heidelberg?
No, the University of Miami.
Ah, well, that's kind of like the Heidelberg of the Southeastern Seaboard.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Great. Devin, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome, and your interest in the topic as well, please.
Hi, it's good to be here. I am over in California, but my work is primarily in East Africa and Rwanda. We work with vulnerable women in Rwanda as a nonprofit to work with the local government there, but also to help women get an education. So I'm coming from the nonprofit sector, so I don't know how much I'll be able to speak to the topic, but I'm certainly interested in the ways that we intersect here.
Oh gosh, there's a ton of things, particularly with vulnerable populations, post-conflict situations. So we'll get to your areas of expertise as the hour wears on. So welcome. Chandrakant, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yes, thank you, and good evening to all. My name is Chandrakant Salunke. I'm the founder and president of SME Chamber of India. It's a 28-year-old organization which is working for the growth of SME sector at local and global level. We are representing more than 1.5 billion SME sector in India. We are on a forefront for the policy making, policy implementation, supporting SMEs for go global, and of course, to exploring various business opportunity and educating them, building the bridge between Indian and overseas companies to enhance the bilateral trade and out and inbound investment. So I'm going to speak about how the human businesses and the building businesses of the for the future, because most of the important that during this pandemic the SME sector is impacted sector, and they have to decide how to revive for a survival, for a long-term survival. This is my topic today. Thank you.
Wonderful, and welcome, and hello to all the panelists. Carl, will you be joining us on the panel here as well today, so I can lob some questions over to you, if you're there? I'm going to assume not until I hear back from there. Oh.
I don't think you can see us, but no, not on this one.
Okay, thanks so much. Great. Well, let me introduce myself. I'm Professor James Cooper. I'm a professor of law and director of international legal studies at California Western School of Law here in San Diego. I'm also a research fellow at the Singapore University of Social Sciences. I've got 25 years of experience in disruptive technologies, mostly legal reform and the technologies associated with that in Latin America, but I've been an IP lawyer and in the early days worked at Baker McKenzie, made the world safe for global capitalism, and I've been paying for it ever since. So let's not turn this into my personal human resources therapy session and ask Thomas to start because of his area of expertise in human architecture. Can you explain how human architecture works and how the pandemic has severely affected what was the original design of how labor rights and so forth and the global economy works for everyone, please?
Well, yeah, I mean, I call myself a human business architect. I don't have anything with architecture per se, but I'm more like, maybe a designer. And let me explain first what a human business is all about versus traditional business. In traditional business, we treat employees as resources. That's the one denominator. And in human business, we treat employees as, believe it or not, people, human beings. So that's the first major difference. In, let's say, kind of like a provocative way, in traditional business, it was all about shareholder value, or the last 20, 30, 40 years, maximizing shareholder value. In human business, it's about generating value for and by people. And to some, this may be kind of like esoteric. It shouldn't be, because when we talk about our customers, in most cases, we're talking about people, human beings, but it's not just value generation for the customers. We generate value for the employees. There's something like a happy workplace, and this results in, let's say, business value, and this can include the shareholders, but this is the result. So the main driver is really, how can we build a business that benefits us all? And the question, a couple of years ago, actually, was in Davos. I was at a panel at the Open Forum, and I asked an older couple what they were thinking about the future and digitization and stuff. And they said, well, actually, they were kind of afraid of the future. They said, like, with all the technology going on, digital, and will we have enough space for us? And then I reframed the question. I was like, well, let me ask you this question. Do you know how you want to live in the future? And they said, well, yes, of course we do. I mean, here in Davos, we live like very close to nature. We care for the environment. We care for our society. And then they start talking how they raise their kids, and that they're still, who left Davos in the meantime, and who were all over the world. Then they're connected with Skype, and they can still drive because of the autonomous driving. So they listed all the various digital gadgets. So once more, I asked them, so what do you think of the digital age? And they said, well, now that you ask us the first question, how you want to live in the future, it's completely different. But digital is a tool, but it's basically about us, how we want to live as people. And so this is like, what I would really like to help establish. And this is kind of like, you can say, my mission. This is also the topic of my book, The Spirit of Human Business.
Thank you for that. What have you seen in Heidelberg specifically with respect to how COVID has affected laborers? It's been great for those of us who already taught online. I hate to use the word it's been great, having lost family members to it personally, but it's been great in the sense of it hasn't been as bad. Our shift in the academic world online, what would have taken years, only took a matter of a week in terms of to Zoom. And I want to ask each of the panelists this going forward. What have you seen where you are in Germany? And I'll leave it there.
Well, it's like, actually, it was kind of a coincidence. I joined Allianz in the middle of the pandemic. So I still haven't met most of my colleagues yet, so because everything is virtual. So that was really not the issue. But what people really learned to appreciate is the social interaction with people, which all of a sudden broke away. That was not even there. And so this changed a lot. I mean, right now people are focusing on work, but they're missing the social interaction. And this is like when you see now that after the lockdown, people just like, they were really, they just wanted to meet people again, and they still do. They go out in nature, and they have a different relationship toward nature. And so this really changed a lot. And you can do a lot of things virtually, and it definitely facilitates a lot, but it's no substitute for human interaction. And human interactions actually have become more important than ever before.
Thanks for that. Devin, there's a two-part question because you're also an actress, and there's a lot of everyone's looking to that Alec Baldwin unfortunate accident and just terrible event with the alleged fake gunner. How does Abby, you're joining us as well. Wonderful.
How are you? Just on Indian Standard Time here. Got a little confused with the syllabus.
Not to worry. Go Penguins. Okay. We'll be right back to you. Devin, yes, I've researched everybody. So you've been an actress, and you're doing this wonderful work in East Africa. Can you talk a little bit workplace and this, laborers are always the last in the stakeholder value chain that people think about, unfortunately. Has this been the case in COVID in your industry? Because we think about workplace safety, particularly in the Hollywood movies and so forth, and in some of the more entertainment oriented industries, but also connected to the work you're doing in East Africa with the impoverished women in Rwanda, please.
Yeah, I think in both cases, and first of all, I'm honored that you've researched. I think in both cases, we've had to be really fluid with what we're doing. The difficulties in the film industry, are sort of provided for because everybody is, told to be vaccinated, and then before you go to set, you're wearing the mask, and then when you do a take, you're taking it off, and everything seems to work a little bit better. Whereas if you're dealing with the nonprofit world, at least in my part of the world in East Africa, we have, restrictions on what we can get from country to country. A lot of our operations have had to sort of stall because things we were waiting on from a bordering nation in Kenya, we couldn't get through because of COVID customs issues. And so we've had all sorts of ups and downs, and our program, our trade school, has sort of stopped and then reopened and stopped and reopened, I think 3 or 4 times now, based on the country's lockdown rules. And so we have to abide by those, obviously. So it's been really tricky. We've managed, and we have our women getting back in school now for our trade school program, but even just we were donated, cosmetics to send over there to the women, and even just getting a package from Los Angeles to Rwanda in the middle of the pandemic was absolutely incredibly difficult. I had to get in touch with the Rwandan embassy in DC. They were able to send things over. It took months. So it's been an interesting journey for sure. I'm not sure how other nonprofits have been dealing with it, but we're all sort of in the same boat of just really a tough time.
And they can't pivot to online because there might not be Wi-Fi in their particular rural environments. They don't have the smartphones or the laptops or the tablets. So there's a lot of infrastructural problems that relate to underdevelopment, right?
Exactly. We can't do anything unless it's in person. So when we are in person, we're trying to be as safe as possible, but then, you don't want to put anyone's health at risk. And so it's been a tricky time for sure.
No, I can imagine. Thank you for the work you're doing. And let's focus now on the subcontinent. Chandrakant, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing, especially among the members of your Chamber of Commerce, how workers are getting affected and infected because the workplace safety mechanisms might not be there. The vaccines are not fully rolled out, obviously, in much of the world. What are you seeing from your perspective in India, please, with respect to worker safety and COVID-19?
Thank you, James. This was really very, very difficult time and task for the SME sector when the corona entered in India. In the end of the January, few cases, then February, few cases, then March was started, the cases become a double digit and 3 digit in the month of March. So the first lockdown started from the April onwards, and the Indian SMEs are not prepared for this kind of pandemic or prepared for this jerk or other, difficult time. But nevertheless, they in 2 months' time, they took over properly. They have come on the track after May. And my chamber has played a very, very important role for the, encouraging the SMEs to those involved in essential product manufacturing, because all the industries, all the, laborers, migrant labor left from the city, from the industry. And therefore, so many challenges faced by the SME sector, particularly manufacturing industry in India. But nevertheless, with the government, central government, union government, particularly with the state government, they have started encouraging the company owners, small entrepreneurs, to start their business, start manufacturing industry, bring some limited workforce, and start manufacturing, particularly the essential products, because that time mostly the packaging industry, plastic industry, paper industry, it was very, very important for the healthcare sector. Those are manufacturing the medicines, those are manufacturing the healthcare products. So therefore, we have started encouraging the SME. And after the June 2020, then slowly we started rolling. And during that time, James, you will be happy to note that most of around 50% SMEs, and Anand Singh must be aware about it, those are not even utilizing the digital platform. They have started utilizing digital platform at June 2020. They started using the platform. Rather, we say work from home. I said, no, do business from home. The business, doing business from home. That concept I brought in a SME sector. We have, supported them to identify affordable technology, useful technology. And therefore, most of the SMEs started doing business from the home, and they started encouraging company. And I'm thankful to Mr. Modi, our Prime Minister, who has brought, with our efforts, who has brought the emergency credit facility for SME sector, because most of the SMEs are dependent on the supply chain finance and the banking sector. So Mr. Modi has brought very, very essential product, which is an emergency loan, and therefore all the SME sector, using this particularly financial fuel, they started producing the quality product, and not only for local market, they have started producing the international market. So this is a story is going on for last 2 years, but I want to tell you that SME sector from India came on a track very, very fast. They have started contributing for the Indian economy. They have started contributing for the industrial production, and most importantly, the Honorable Prime Minister of India and the Commerce Minister had given us a target. The target for achieving the 400 billion US dollars exports for this year, from April 2021 to December 2020 December, and now the 3 months we will be crossing more than 500 billion US dollars exports. So this is a role played by SME sector, and of course we have target 2030. We want to go more than $3 trillion exports. So these challenges I have taken as a president of the chamber, and I am encouraging, supporting SMEs. And most importantly, I want to tell everyone that Indian banks are a backbone of Indian SMEs. Indian SMEs are surviving because of the Indian banks, and because of SME sector, India is growing. India is achieving the target goal. Thank you.
Well, congratulations. The small and medium enterprises, we always think of multinationals are able to turn on a dime and take that dime with them. It's more now the SMEs that are really leading, and we'll talk more about that. And then specifically, also interested in a little bit later what Thomas thinks, having written a lot about leadership and so forth. We've got 2 more guests I want to welcome and then bring them into the conversation. Abhi Sinha is here. From Beverly Hills, although the question, and Yael Fishman will welcome. Abby, you were born in India but grew up in Pittsburgh, hence my Go Pittsburgh Penguins. And but you saw, whether it was Mario Lemieux from Canada, you saw the value of globalization as a young man or as a kid growing up. You're not only bi-coastal but bicultural. What are you seeing in terms of where the United States and India have excelled, or maybe not excelled, I don't want to be negative, when it comes to COVID-19 and labor protections? What like your industry, you can't do it online in the acting industry. Right. So a lot of people who are doing lower skilled jobs have to show up at work. Right. They don't have the option to pivot online like those of us in the academy or in business who can do it from the comforts of our own living rooms. So I'm curious what you've been able to see that with both the kind of intercultural, bicultural lens that you look through.
Well, it's interesting. I think one of the main problems between the discourse of information, whether it's political, whether it's about COVID, which is also political, it usually has a common denominator, and that's wealthier, more industrialized areas. And it's really synonymous with the acting industry in Hollywood. Kind of to back what Devin was saying earlier, everything is, everything is supplied, everything is taken care of, your COVID tests, your masks, everything. You don't have any of that in India. And I mean, I spoke with Sonu Sood earlier, who's done such amazing work in India when all these migrants were displaced. Thousands of migrants he arranged transportation for, buses, chartered planes, so they were able to get home. Basically, there has to be a more individualistic effort to reach out to these people, to connect with these people who don't have the same kind of resources and opportunities to help themselves. And we've seen that in smaller cases as COVID has gone on, but there is definitely a disconnect in my industry, which I love, by the way. That's very synonymous with the disconnect we see from, wealthier, more industrialized areas of the world.
Thanks for that. And that is actually a good segue to Yael Fishman, who deals with luxury properties and after an illustrious career in law. Can I ask Yael what you've seen from your perspective in the Hamptons in terms of how the upper-heeled or the well-heeled folks are dealing with COVID? Is it like everything else? This doesn't touch them, or is it affecting them like it is everyone else?
I think COVID has, first of all, hi to everybody.
Welcome.
Nice to see everybody.
Hey.
COVID and the pandemic has affected everybody on the planet. And as we know that I don't know how many, close to 6 million dead. It's like, it's a Holocaust, if you will. So it's a very serious topic. Most people, the wealthy and the poor and in between, are struggling with just trying to grappling what the facts are, developing distrust in a lot of the authorities. I'm sure you're familiar with that because information keeps changing and from various sources. So that's also creates a source of confusion. What we saw in the Hamptons, very interesting, and a lot of luxury rural areas around the world, is this great exodus last year when people fled the cities and went to areas to escape and be away in their own castles, if you will, and to be safe. That momentum in real estate markets seems to be continuing this year, even as we've made progress against the pandemic. And people are valuing their retreats, but not even because of the pandemic, but because of the changes the way we're doing business. We're now on a conference digitally on Zoom, and most of us have all been doing business this way, talking to people around the globe. Partners in many law firms are not going back to the 2.5, 3-hour commutes. Everything has changed. We're going to see the repositioning of real estate assets as when the leases renew in the big cities like in Manhattan. They're not going to renew with the same amount of space. They're not feeling it yet because these wealthy firms have plenty of money now to pay the leases. But at renewal, they don't need 10 floors if only 3, 4 floors of people are going in. And so we're going to see a lot of changes in the world happening because of that. But the wealthy are not insulated from society. They're part of society. They want to live and enjoy, and this has impacted that enjoyment, the freedom of mobility, to travel safely, to feel good. And so having these type of beautiful homes that we create in these areas does give people, not just the super wealthy, but moderate people and medium people, a place to go and to enjoy their families and live their life and do their businesses, even from these locations. So I see that. Thanks
For that. Let's you talk about how life is moving and it's going to keep changing. Let's talk about the role of technology. Thomas, we'll start with you, please. What I'm really curious about is, clearly technology hasn't helped low-skilled workers to the degree that it's helped those of us who are able to, again, to work through Zoom and do our business through Zoom and don't have the kind of tactile jobs where you're actually physically making something or cleaning something or producing something. But I'm curious from your perspective, what the role of robotics going forward is going to mean in terms of the double whammy. First, you've got all the difficulty surrounding COVID-19, and then the oncoming of AI, which will be more, and robotics affecting some of the more manual and low skilled jobs, as we've seen in the car manufacturing industries and so forth, but robotics 4.0 or industrialization 4.0, and how, but AI is going to affect all the people like Yale and myself, lawyers. It's going to affect doctors. It's going to, you don't need a radiologist to check an X-ray. A machine's going to do that for you. So as a futurist, I'm curious, is that a kind of a 1-2-3 punch for everybody, or is the future also now going to come to nip at us in the professional classes as well?
Well, I think it already has. I mean, if you look at education, I mean, everything's available, online, mostly for free. So the question, is legitimate, if whether or not somebody wants to spend like $50,000 or $60,000 a year to attend a college or university, or do it online. I think that with AI and robotics, I think we're going to see vast and very fast developments. And me personally, I'm not really that worried about it. Actually, I see there's a risk, of course. Their jobs will be eliminated, traditional jobs will be eliminated, and new ones will be created. So the question is like, what happens with those who will lose their jobs? I think education and training is even more important, and I also believe government and society has to play a key role. That's my personal opinion. The thing is, like, I think the nature of work is going to change, because some of the routine jobs, machines can do it. Okay, but this gives us more time, more space to use our creativity, and which is like a machine cannot really do. So for the younger generation, the question is like, what do we teach them? Is it just like that we want to say generate databases, so they have to memorize all the data, which, by the way, if they just use their iPhone, everything is available on the fingertip? Or actually, do we teach them how to learn, how to ask the right questions, how to ask questions about how we want to shape the future? So it's not, the old paradigm is like upside down. So this is, for some people, it's a revolution. It is a revolution. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to shape really a more human society, a human world. And for example, also like what you mentioned, Zoom and the internet. This way, the COVID has actually, facilitated the progress of learning more about projects such as like Devon's project in Africa. And I have been on conferences worldwide with people in the past would not have been possible because people now are more open to these channels. But let's be clear. I mean, there are still certain things that will not change, and like social interactions. Like you said, do we have to clean the streets, etc.? Or they say you go to pharmacists, you need to have the human interaction, and this becomes more important. However, the rules of work change. Who says that we have to work 40 hours a week? Maybe we only work 20 hours a week with same salary. I think this is something we're going to see soon.
Well, good luck when you move to France, where they've got a much lower average work week. But it's very true. You're going to see this kind of harmonization. It's a very thoughtful answer, which leads us to Devon, because you deal with women in Rwanda. Technology doesn't play nearly as, I would imagine, as big a role in some of the work that they're doing. Can you describe how technology does play a role, if at all?
Sure. Yeah, I'll actually give you a full scope answer here that I was going to speak to about the agility of our operations over there. Is that we began offering college scholarships to women, and a lot of them majored in technology and IT and all these kinds of things in these wonderful, Kigali, Rwanda, the main city, has these wonderful universities. And so essentially women, when we started 10 years ago, women had the opportunity to either go to school, get a degree and get a career, or get married. And that was pretty much their options if they were that lucky and not in some of the very, very poor rural areas of Rwanda. And so I was excited as a female entrepreneur and somebody who really believes in the power of women to change things around them and help their families and their communities, to offer these college scholarships. As time has gone on, unfortunately, I mean, this is what we were just speaking to, is it's good and bad to have sort of this virtual world now, right? Where women are, if they're trained and they're well equipped, they can work from anywhere. But as you spoke to, we don't have the technological advances in certain parts of Rwanda that other places do. So it's a double-edged sword here. It's good and bad potentially. I'm curious to see what's going to happen next, because we haven't had the opportunity to transition our girls from university, this wonderful degree they've gotten, into the workplace as much. The job opportunities have not come to Rwanda as we hoped. So much to my dismay, we had to sort of pivot, and we opened a trade school where now we're teaching the women who are the poorest of the poor, have no other opportunities. They may have children, they may be single parents, which is really like taboo over in certain cultures in Rwanda. And now they're just learning how to sew, and which is great, right? They're learning how to build their own business and to provide for their families. It wasn't the ideal that we went in with, but we had to sort of, again, be fluid with our operations. And so now the question is, once we hopefully get more industry over in Rwanda, which the country is open to business, I will say it's a little bit tricky politically, but it's open. And so hopefully in the future, we'll be able to get back more into the education space, train all of our students in technology, allow them to work potentially remotely. That would be a dream. I know a lot of them don't want to leave their home country. So it's an interesting time for sure to have potential opportunity, but also all of these roadblocks ahead of us.
Thank you for that. Chandrakant, can you tell us a little bit about how the SMEs are adapting in this hopefully soon to be post-COVID world, but with respect to technology specifically, and how they are using, I mean, India is the home of so much of the technology, the home of the IIT, the Indian Institute of Technology, and so much more. What are you seeing, particularly among the SMEs, which don't have nearly as big a budget to adopt these things?
In India, around say 75 million SMEs are there, MSME, micro, small, and medium-sized industries. In that, 50% SMEs are dependent fully on manufacturing sector, and they have started adopting the advanced technology, affordable technology, patented technology, and therefore our SME Chamber of India is putting a lot of efforts, educating, encouraging, supporting SMEs to identify advanced technology, identify new and advanced machines, equipments for a quality productivity. Because in India, the most of the family businesses, Anand aware about the family businesses run by families, operated by families, and they are focusing more on the productivity. But now this pandemic, every person in India, every entrepreneur learn that technology is important, how the Davos has become a digital from last year. So similarly, we have also started adapting the digital system, the advanced technology. Rather, let me give you proudly I can say that Indian SMEs are now ready to compete in a fourth industrial revolution. They have started improving their industrial automation. They have started, improving their quality, the productivity, because we have to compete with China. We have to compete with the world market. So therefore, we are encouraging, we are supporting them for quality productivity. We are focusing the brand India product in the international market. How we can brand Indian products made by Indian SMEs, that is our role. That is my chamber role. Supporting Indian SMEs, fueling them by finance, fueling them through the manpower, and mostly the raw material, affordable raw material, easily available raw material. We are putting efforts. And most importantly, Indian institutes, like you said, IIT and other institutes in India, producing the quality manpower for the future. Because Honorable Prime Minister of India has shown the new India a path. That path, we are walking on that path. So our role and our responsibility to encourage new entrepreneurship, encouraging entrepreneurship to producing the quality productivity, not only for local market, but global market. So I want to say that proudly, the Indian SMEs are becoming very strong, and most of the in the next 4 years' time, you will see that India is a manufacturing hub. So all world will come to India to take product from India.
Wonderful. And people forget it's not just SMEs that are coming out of India, but the USB. So it's
Yes.
an acronym festival. Yael Fishman, let me ask you this, because you're again in a different world, a more rarefied world, but you're not untouched by digitization and your previous profession, law, and now with luxury properties. How has digitization affected what you're doing, and then how will it affect it going forward?
Great, it's a good question. I think as technology advances, all of us, even the people who like to stick to basics and don't want to learn a new trick, we have no choice. For example, in the homes I build, everything is smart technology. You control everything from your phone. So whether it's I want to turn on the heat, or I want to have the security cameras, or if I'm inside and I want to bring up my outdoor cinema out of its underground vault, I press a button on my phone and it's up and it's down. Unless, as I had a test this weekend when I was in the Hamptons, the wind was very strong. So there's sensors and technology that wouldn't let me bring up the big cinema, which is how you watch football, because there's no greater experience. You're all invited, and to come to my Southampton resort, and then you can watch the game inside when it's cold in the winter, but it's like you're outside because you have that cinema. It's like, like in Times Square, those main those things. That's what I did.
Careful.
And only one of the Hamptons that's available today. Okay, there's
And the only one we're invited to today, by the way.
exactly.
Be careful, because there are people. There's a couple 100,000 people because of social media that may be watching, because some of our Indian colleagues are followed quite heavily. So prepare a big nacho bowl.
It's
Oh, yeah.
it's an interesting segue to something else that's digital. So about 2 years ago, one of my homes was in a one of these real estate shows called $1 Million Beach House
On Netflix, yes.
And if you want to watch it, I'm in episode 6. That's about the only thing redeeming about the whole show is my short appearance. So, and in a week or so, or maybe in 2 days, I'm having another show coming out on Discovery Channel, and you could see that show. I think that one's called Selling the Hamptons. Anyway, here's something that Devin's going to like. This past summer, we had the 1640 Hampton Society, which is a group of leading people around the world that get together and we solve the world problems, or we think we do. And I had it at my home. I was the host of it in this particular house in Southampton. I just finished it literally in time for the conference. And I had my guest, Sean Reyes, who's the Attorney General of the state of Utah, who was one of the brave heroes that went into Colombia and rescued 127 girls that were trafficked. You've probably heard about this type of operations, and they really made a big difference. There's a film on it. And I had this epiphany, which I was talking with him for a few months before we had the conference, that I've got to do something to fight the plight of trafficking. And I know Devin's charity was started with her acts in Rwanda for partially because of trafficked girls. And it's a plight around the world. And so at the conference, he announced what I was planning on doing, which was instead of making one of these silly shows like Selling Sunset or the shows I was on, which features shows about beautiful glitzy places like the ones I build and the brokers who sell them, I pivoted and said, I'm going to make a show about the most amazing places on the planet and the amazing people that are making the world a better place. And I started filming literally then. I've already done episodes in the BVI, Mexico. We're shooting in Southampton. I have Ireland, Argentina. And in the first episode we're going to do, which we'll release, this will be something socially impactful. And it leads into kind of your question on digitalization, because I'll tell you a quick story in a second. Anyway, we're going to basically do a social impact film, but it's going to be exciting, sexy, going to bring people behind the scenes to talk to some of the leaders around the world, which a lot of people are embracing this cause because it's a way we can make change. I have the largest platform in the world, millions, hundreds of millions of people, and I'll shine a light on trafficking. We're going to talk about energy issues and renewable energy and cleaning the waters and the seas. And in fact, we'll be sponsoring putting in a electrical grid in a hospital in Africa where when the power goes out, they operate under flashlights. So we're going to seek to change that. In my company, we're actually sponsoring the initiation of that and linking up with other people around the world that are doing similar ideas. On a humorous side,
let me stop you there, and we'll come back. Remember, we'll put a pin in that and come back to that thought. Abby, you this kind of raises the issue. I mean, we've now moved into more socially relevant issues. I'm curious, from your perspective, again, being able to bifurcate both, or to be able to have straddle, if you will, 1 foot in India, 1 foot in the States, although a majority now in the States. You're a member of the Screen Actors Guild, I would imagine, and which is a very powerful union. Do you see a role for trade unions to be impactful, like what maybe not to the glitzy degree that, to use Yale's word, but do you see a role for trade unions to play a role to protect workers' rights, to ensure that other stakeholders other than the owning class can get access to all the social values that should exist in our respective democracies?
Yeah, I do, but it's still, I think, mainly up to the up to the individual to kind of, protect themselves. If we're going to go, more into the integration of technology, especially in somewhere like India, the unions can be a good resource, but it's still up to the individual to provide the change that we want to see there. For example, in India, there's a lot of confrontation between, very villagers and animals. Villagers who their entire source of food for a week is, their cow or their chickens, and then, a tiger will come in and kill that animal, and then the villagers want to take revenge on that animal, go out and hunt it, and cause just more and more violence. And this is not just, partial to India. This happens in Africa. The Masai Mara lion will kill their cow, and they will basically take revenge on it, go kill a male lion, and then that male lion is not around to protect their herd, their pride, and a rogue lion will come in and kill cubs. And so it's just violence promoting more and more violence. And the integration of technology really allows us to resolve those conflicts in nonviolent ways. But I would say it's more up to the individual still. The unions can help with resources, but it really does come from within to start.
Thank you for that. Let me stay on the trade union road, or at least organized labor to a sense, and ask Thomas, please. You're in Germany. Trade unions have a huge role in German industry. They sit on boards of directors of companies by law. They can make or break political parties. Do you think that trade unionism is for the future, especially in light of some of the things like AI and robotics that we were talking about earlier?
It was interesting. Just like 2 days ago on Monday, I was at a workers' council meeting, and I was talking about a future project we were working on. And in the past, what I've been observing is that the workers' council and labor unions or trade unions, some of them are still stuck in the last century, I have to admit. Now we can criticize them for this, or we start a dialogue, because I think that what they do is, like, often they address the concerns of the common people. And whatever they say, it's kind of like a channel. And if we do not take them seriously, if we don't listen to them, or we don't start the dialogue, it's very difficult to accelerate change. There is going to be change, and they're afraid of, that, jobs will be eliminated. So I think they have to be sitting at the table when we talk about the future, because it's a very relevant voice. I'm not saying that I'm always like, proponent of some of their claims, etc. Sometimes it's more the opposite, but this does not mean that we have to involve them and reach out to them. I think it's very important, because it would be ignorant and arrogant if we say, well, we do not involve them. I mean, it's like, no matter where you go, I mean, they're critical voices. And if we start talking about the future, it's more a human future. Okay, that's a dialogue. Then we have to reach out to them. If we're not capable of listening, we are missing one of the most important leadership skills, listening and starting a dialogue, holding the space, or creating the space and holding the space.
Thank you for that. Devin, you're both a member, I would imagine, of the SGA, but also you work with cooperatives and have to deal with all sorts of different bureaucratic layers in places like Rwanda. What's your take on it? Does organized labor have a future, especially in a post-pandemic world?
Yes, I'm in Screen Actors Guild, and in Rwanda, we don't necessarily have the organized labor because everything is sort of, as I'm sure many of you are well versed in Rwandan politics, it's very delicate. And even in communications on WhatsApp, we have to be very careful of what is said and how we're organizing our operations and how we're doing it. I did speak yesterday to something that is helpful to us, and that we are in cooperation with the local government, who has identified the poorest of the poor women in the hierarchical structure of Rwanda. And so that's who we end up funding primarily, is those women who are vulnerable and in need, and it has been very helpful. So we don't have any sort of organization amongst the people, but we do have the people in collaboration with the local government and ultimately the larger government in order to sort of organize, and so far it's working. So we've been at it, a very small operation over there, registered with the government for a decade. My goal is to grow and expand the organization, and I certainly need help with that, because right now we're serving a small portion of the community, and we're hoping to grow it into the hundreds and maybe even expand to other countries. But right now we're just focused on Rwanda. So sorry, that didn't really answer the organized labor portion of it, but it's something that's not available to us, which I think may benefit us, but we don't have it.
Just trying to bridge everybody's resumes and subject interests, short of going to see the Super Bowl at Yale's house.
Nachos idea, that sounded good.
Yeah.
Invite's open.
Thank you.
Okay, provide the address. Okay.
Yeah. And Devin, if you would, in the chat box to everyone, if you could give us the website of your organization, please, so that we can follow up and help support it, that would be terrific. Chandrakant, one last question on organized labor, and then I promise I'll get away from it. I'm the grandson of a former labor union leader, so I have to ask these things. International lady garment workers, I might add. Yes, there's only one generation between me and a sewing machine. So let me ask you this. In India, and particularly with your SMEs, are you seeing, because here in North America, labor unions are less and less powerful over time. We're seeing less membership. We are seeing global competition as the great globalization bargain plays itself out with all these multilateral and regional and bilateral trade agreements in the US and all really the so-called globalized North, or the industrialized North, I should say, Western industrialized countries. We've seen a lot of jobs, manufacturing jobs, smokestack economy move to other parts of the world, the developing world. That's not a secret. This has been going on since the end of the Cold War. But I'm curious, in India, are you seeing especially because of the pandemic, a renewal of organized labor, or where people are standing up for their rights because they've seen the kind of disparities that have existed that have been exacerbated by the pandemic?
First of all, let me tell you, nowadays, India, there is no labor unions are very active, because most of the Indian industries in a SME sector, particularly small and medium sector, they are securing their manpower because they are educating the unskilled to skill, and they are educating them to work properly in their business, and they are treating them as a family member. So therefore, in SME sector, there is no labor union harassment or interference going on. But now the large corporate in India, they have a labor union, particularly for the welfare system, particularly for improving the technological development, particularly the securing the interest of the labor, in political level also. They have an interest of the political base also, because this is a large voter bank. So therefore, they play very important. But in the Indian industry, particularly SME sector, there is no role at all of the labor union. And labor union, because of the wipeout, because of there is a particularly political movement, political interference. So every entrepreneur, every businessman now learn about how to secure the interest of their employees. giving proper their welfare, providing their wages, providing their salary properly, and mostly they are looking there. During this pandemic, each company they have given shelter, they have given food, they have given all this arrangement to stay in their factory. But our Prime Minister, Government of India has brought new idea that wherever the industry, manufacturing industries are there, they are setting up the labor camp, employment camp, constructing the houses, low budget houses where the labor can stay, where the labor can afford to stay nearby the factory, nearby, and they can't travel. In India, there is a huge, a huge gap for a particular migrant labor. Once there is a pandemic started, once any political movement started, all migrant labor goes to their hometown. Therefore, coming back is a difficulty. But now everything is coming on the track, and I'm sure that next 3 months' time we will be achieving the proper target growth. And most of the time, Corona will be now going to, I don't know how many years he's surviving, but nevertheless, Indian people have started learning, started competing with the world market, and starting, to survive in this Corona pandemic.
Thank you for that. And you raise a really good point about migrants, and I want to switch now to undocumented migrants or economic migrants, folks who there is no shortage of labor pools in every country, right? South Africa's got millions of undocumented people from Southern Africa, from Zimbabwe and elsewhere. Nicaragua, there are 1 million undocumented Nicaraguans in Costa Rica. There are, according to the Pew Research Center here in the U.S., somewhere between 11 and 15 million undocumented people here. Europe is filled as well. There are, again, find me a country, I'll find you an undocumented labor pool for the most part. Having said that, labor rights don't extend to these people. They're living in the shadows. The ability to be part of a stakeholder economy eludes them. And there are tens of millions of undocumented people in different countries around the world. 5 million undocumented Ethiopians in Saudi Arabia. There is no area that is immune from this problem. And yet our economies rely completely on this mode of exploitation, this modern day slavery in some cases, and internally in some countries, whether it's in the People's Republic of China or the Republic of India. As Chandrakant was saying earlier, there is a lot of movement, whether for jobs or for the environment. I wanted to ask for all of you in each of your respective countries, how do you see that going forward? Is it getting worse for migrants, or is it getting better? And has the pandemic completely exacerbated their very precarious labor situation? Please, Thomas, if you'd start.
I was afraid that I would have to
go
first.
You're our go-to guy because you got
yeah, there you go. Well, first of all, I'm not sure if there is a future of exploiting people, period. I mean, whenever people are exploited as resources, I think we're making a big mistake. And because like a resource can be replaced, but then there will be no more resources. But the thing is that if we really want to unfold the potential of people, we cannot treat them as, exploitable resources. That's a general remark. Now, with respect to say to Germany, with the new government in place, I think we'll see migrants, and they do have actually more rights than in many other countries. Maybe that's probably one of the reasons why it's quite a few of them want to come to Germany. But it's like a European issue, or it's a global issue. If I live somewhere, let's say in Africa, and I had a chance to, let's say, make it to Germany, I would do it. Let's be, realistic, and I think it's legitimate. So we have to look at, if we still look at from, let's say, a national perspective. Okay, there's Germany, there's Austria, there's Switzerland, there's the US, and it's an isolated problem. No, it's a global issue, and it's a global issue, systemic issue. We have to look at it from a systemic point of view. I think it is foolish not to include them in the first labor market. That's a general remark, and I think this is also the general tone of right now of the present government in Germany. And we'll see how far we get, but eventually we have to involve them, reach out to them, and stop treating them as exploitable resources.
Thank you for that. Devin, do you have a sense? And
James, can I add one sentence
go
here?
right ahead. Go right ahead, Chan.
See, we are talking about migrant labor and migrant manpower. You know, in the Middle East, the Indian people are more than 9 million people are working in the Middle East. During this pandemic, more than 2.5 million people came back to India. Why? Because industry is growing, industry is moving ahead. So therefore now people started coming back to India to work here, identifying their jobs in India. So it is a reverse mechanism started now because of pandemic. And you know, usually that international travel is not working, and mostly the Indian companies are providing the labor, providing the manpower, and providing proper services. Therefore, Indian companies are coming ahead. You look at our capital market, look at our production, look at our productivity, and look at our role of Indian government. So therefore, India is moving, India is going ahead.
Great, thank you for that. Devin, what are you seeing in East Africa, Rwanda specifically? Are people still gearing themselves to get to Paris or to Brussels because it was a Belgian colony?
I'm sort of seeing, at least in the communities that I have been working with, is sort of the opposite. People have so much pride in their country and they sort of want to stay. And that's actually been a hindrance to some of our operations, because I found, as I spoke to earlier, job opportunities in the neighboring countries and they wouldn't go. So I think it's a unique case. It's a small country. It's only around 11 million people, but there's a lot of national pride, and the people who do live there sort of want to stay, in as much as I can understand from my work.
Thank you for that. Abby, what's your sense of what's going on? Is everybody still want to go to Hollywood in your industry, or they?
Well, I mean, it's funny. You said there were what, about 15 million undocumented workers in the USA. I mean, it feels like almost half of those people are in California alone. And I've heard firsthand, workers say, I had to go to work sick today, whether they had COVID or flu or something else. It's because they don't have those unions to protect them, to give them the paid time off, the sick leave, whatever. And it's just amazing how that doesn't just then affect the people in lower socioeconomic areas or poor people. That affects everyone. The wealthy, the middle class. If you're exposed to that, so we definitely got to figure out a way, like Thomas said, to not treat these people in ways that's just centered around exploitation.
And that's where our sustainable development goals kind of fit in, and I pulled them up. I won't share them with you because I think everybody should know them by now, but a decent work in economic growth, number 8. But again, climate action is all part of it, because increasingly you're seeing environmental refugees and environmental migrants that are heading out of areas where they just can't grow food anymore for sustainable living. I wanted to ask Yale what your sense is, again, since you're sitting at a different perch than say what Devin is in terms of her work, but you're trying to give back. What's your sense of migrants? I imagine you come from a family of migrants a couple generations back as well. But are things getting better on your side of the United States?
On the East Coast, I mean, the doors are open wherever they're coming, and they're filtering all over, and it's a challenge for the societies that we see this immigrant flow, and that's a secondary political debate about how you bring people in and how do you do it the right way and so on. But it trickles up. The markets are efficient, so people are going to go where the jobs and where the money is. And the governments of the world are going to try to control that process to make it safe and comply with their laws, each to different degrees. I really haven't in my workforce seen a lot of I'll call it illegal immigrants. I'm sure they're here, but there's a lot of people you drive by, you see people standing for jobs coming, and it's not really in ours. So I know there's a lot of it around. We haven't been directly in my work operations been impacted or see it, so to speak. It's there, we know it it's out there, but because we have to have everybody's kind of documented and to get into and get a paycheck and so on.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. Let's switch out now to a different topic, and as we start to, we're going to go to a lightning round at the end. But I wanted to do something a little more, I don't know, spicy or controversial. We talked earlier about AI, and this panel is supposed to be about equity and about multiple stakeholders getting a bigger slice of the pie or being more involved in future economic growth. But a lot of this is going to be machine-based. Do machines have rights? Should they get some of the labor rights? Should they have the right? They get an hour off, or is it like the Geneva Convention where they get letters and they can do an hour of exercise and some fresh water? So let me start again with our panel, and we'll move to the left. You're a futurist, Thomas. You must have thought about this at some point.
Yeah. That's fine. That's a good question. Thank you. The question: do they have the same rights as humans? The answer is no. Machines are tools, and we should treat them as tools. However, if you have the same machine, let's say in a factory, and you would run the machine, say 100%, 7/24, what would happen to the machine? It would break down. Now the question is, and how do we treat our people, our employees? Do we give them enough space to say, to recuperate? Because in most cases, it's like 40 or 20 or 60 or 80 hours. We expect like full productivity and, performance, etc. We don't give them leeway to take a break. We expect them to perform, and we don't plan in the extra space to think outside the box. So that's kind of interesting, since if we would care more about machines than our employees, our people, there is something completely wrong. So it would be just foolish to treat, again, people as resources, because we're not resources. We're human beings, we're creative, we're imperfect, and we are imperfect. This actually makes us, or imperfection makes us perfect, because this is what we need, I think, in the future, which is like, can we predict everything? No, we can't. That's why we need to have this creativity, but we need to have the space. So for machines
can be, forgive me, but machines can be creative too, right? Like deep learning.
To a certain extent, yes, we will program it, and you can have AI, etc. But again, it's like, the question is like, if we look into the future, how we want to shape the future, before we talk about technology, let's raise the question: how do we want to live as a society with our environment? That's a question. It's not the question. It's not how will the technology look like, and the question is like, how do we want to live? That's the first question. Once we do this, because see, if we ask the question, what will the future look like, we react to the future. When we ask the question, how do we want to live? We're in the driver's seat. We are change agents, and I want to see us all as change agents, not become victims of technology we have been developing.
Oh, we lost you a little bit. Oh,
oops. Okay.
Yeah, no, you're back. But what about intellectual property, Thomas? You talked about AI. Machines can produce things. Do they get the fruits of their labor, or does the coder or the owner of the machine or the server on which it's held? Who gets the fruits of the invention or the innovation that's actually derived by a machine?
I think that no, I mean, the machine is still not the case. We talked briefly earlier. We talked about blockchain and the various possibilities, opportunities we have with blockchain. So whoever lets it create something new, and you can make sure that that this is blockchain, I think, can help us a great deal. So the traditional intellectual property rights, which happened to be actually back then, 97, my dissertation research, I think we will see lots of changes also due to blockchain. The question is like, if the legal community can catch up with the fast developments in blockchain. I'm not sure. I'm not the expert on this one, but maybe you can answer this. How much you deal with blockchain in the legal community?
Can I just say that some of my colleagues are some of the greatest legal minds of the 19th century. So there's your answer, which is when IP started.
And they're still alive.
Well, it's like, you remember Madeleine Albright. She said something like, I don't know what's the quote is, like, we're using say what was it? We're still living in the past, and we're trying to tackle the future, and we still have used the mindset
we're fighting wars or dealing with problems of the future by using solutions of the past. Absolutely.
And this just doesn't happen. And so if you look at machines, they can look into the future, but it's actually us. I mean, we have to be in the driver's seat. and we have to tackle the real problems. And like what Devin, what you shared, what's happening in Africa. I mean, if we can come up with wonderful AI machines and what have you, but we cannot solve the basic problems, there's something wrong. And I think when we ask the question how we want to live in the future, I think it has to be more inclusive. That's my personal vision.
No, and I salute it, Devin. You know, it's not that long since the massacres of 1994 between Hutus and Tutsis. If we're busy looking at what, you know, ethnic clan or what ethnicity somebody's from, or and picking up axes, you know, that's a far cry from inventing code for AI. Are there a few steps in between that we need to be thinking about?
Oh, deep breath. Yeah, this is what you both have just spoken to is what I was going to say. It's such an interesting time we're living in, because this whole conversation has been geared towards our world becoming more virtual. Everything is remote. You know, we have AI already in action, and we have machines. Do machines have rights? And I mean, I think machines have rights in as much as they can help us and not overtake us. I think if we can, you know, work on getting people access to clean water and wireless internet and things where we can actually create this more equitable world. Whereas if we don't, we run the risk of having these two different realities, really, where like you're saying, there are things going on in certain parts of the world, like in Afghanistan right now, and certainly in, you know, other parts of the world. Rwanda is relatively safe, but we're not even hearing what's going on, or we don't know. And then we're having a totally different conversation about futuristic technology, which is great, but how can we sort of combine the two and not get lost in this meta world that we're all sort of experiencing right now? I think it's a really important sort of existential conversation we're having, and it's good to have. It's good to speak to.
Thanks for that, Abdi. Do you have a sense of that? And can you speak in terms of more and more of your kind of work, like Devin's work in the acting world, is being done online in the metaverse? How you maintain rights and royalties and license fees?
Yeah, it's funny. I've had maybe one or two in-person auditions in the past couple of years. Everything has pretty much been done virtually, and you know, as everyone's line of work has kind of evolved to just being virtual. But it's so like human beings to, you know, enter these conversations about, well, should machines have rights, when I don't think have fully even defined rights for human beings yet. So I think we have to start by having those conversations, like Thomas said, asking the questions about what are our rights, how are we going to give, you know, rights to human beings before we can then decide what the rights of machines are, as to not overtake us, like Devin said. But also, you know, like if there's a car, the person driving the car has more rights than the car itself. If you continue to drive that car forever, it will break down. So there's a balance to this.
Yeah, you have to maintain these. There are certain breaks you have to give cars. They're called warranty or servicing. So
yeah, there you go.
And if it's on the blockchain, to Thomas's point, if you're paying a debt, a loan payment every month, and you don't make that payment, it's got software. The bank can turn it off.
Yep.
Your car's not going to work. So you know, there are certain kinds of servicing, if you will, or not necessarily rights, but obligations that we have. And to your point about getting ahead of ourselves, I'll never forget. It was in the 70s in Israel, when Menachem Begin was prime minister, he was negotiating with the head of the labor union, the Histadrut, which at the time, I don't know if it still is, was the world's largest trade union. And they were asking for a 5-day work week. They were working 6 days. And Menachem Begin said, "You want a 5-day work week?" And the head of the Histadrut said, yeah, 5 days would be great. We're working 6. He said, "Well, show me 1 day, and then we'll get the 5. Don't get ahead of yourself." And it just reminded me, that story reminded me of what we're talking about, in the sense of, you know, we're so far, you know, people say, "Oh, I can do this with my phone." It's like, and I always say, you know, I've got this thing on my phone. It's called phone. And you can talk to people on it. And until we get to that point where we're actually able to talk at base levels and say, okay, we've got all the SDGs lined up, now let's get fancy. So
I mean, you see it in nature as well. I mean, you know, humans for so long, for, you know, 10 years ago, there was 1 million hunter-gatherers on the planet, and they were very, very much dependent on nature for their resources. And we, again, have used our creative minds to, flip that switch. And now nature is very much dependent on us, but we've reached an unbalanced state again. So
yeah, there's a lot to be said here. We're going to start to wind down, but I was curious what Chandrakant, what's your sense of whether machines have rights and kind of the rollout of some of this more deep learning AI among your SMEs in India, please.
Yes, of course, every industry nowadays, improving their capacity, improving their, technological development. AI, even, Indian companies have started adopting the, unique concepts, particularly for, producing the quality productivity. We have to compete with the European market. We have to enter in US market. We have to compete with the other world market. Therefore, AI, rather, industrial automation, even they are entering into the third digital revolution, because digital revolution is one of the best transformation for every company, every enterprise, and mostly the industrial revolution is happening in the world. Rather, India is ready to fourth, but the world is ready to compete to the fifth industrial revolution. So therefore, we are educating, we are empowering, we are encouraging our SME sector to to adopt the advanced technology, look at the unique things. And another very interesting point, nowadays, most of the foreign companies are knocking the door of Indian companies. SME Chamber of India is providing ready-made industrial park, ready-made industrial premises. We have state-of-the-art, the industrial premises, industrial units, where a world company can come down here. They don't want to go for a construction and all these things, but my SME Chamber of India can provide a value addition services to identify the unique support. So this is the work we are doing, and I'm sure that next 5 years we will be achieving more than at least around say 95 million SMEs in India. So where we can provide all the manufacturing hub capacity and the possibility for the world market.
Thank you for that. Yael Fishman, what's your sense, please? And this is your time to tell us that story at the end of your answer.
I may not, because I think with this weighty question, which I thought was in jest, but since you engaged everybody on this concept of AI, I just must bring it to everybody's attention that this was raised 3,500 years ago by the great lawgiver Moses at Mount Sinai in the Bible, in the book of Numbers, where they say there'll be a day of rest, which not only applies to people, your human resources, to your livestock, your animals, and to your vessels or your machinery. So this was put to rest $3,500 because these are resources that if you don't care and protect them, they're going to peter out. Not only that, the Bible instituted another rule about your natural resources in the planet, like your land, to leave it fallow and not work it for an entire year on the 7th year, the sabbatical year. So I think this has been addressed by smarter people than myself, and it seems to have been working, and maybe we should just leave it well enough alone. And I think that's a good enough advice for all.
And that's actually a really good place to end that particular point. I got one more set of questions, and then we'll do lightning round just to give everybody a sense of what's going on. For those of you who are just tuning in, this is Digital Davos 2022. We're talking with an amazing array of people from all over the world about economies that work for all stakeholders, business for humans, building the business of the future beyond technology, and of course, Moses. So multinational corporations, they take it on the nose all the time, probably rightfully so. There are OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, guidelines on multinational enterprises. The Business Roundtable has 160 top corporations, and they're all talking about the ESG and working on sustainable development. I want to switch for a second because they're an easy target. Do big businesses and small businesses alike have the same responsibilities to protect the environment, to protect workers, to ensure that there's fair and equitable treatment and to produce products that aren't dangerous? Or do we hold multinationals to too high a standard and we should start holding, or maybe that's the right standard and we should hold everybody else, those SMEs that Chandrakant has been talking about? So Thomas, we'll start with you in the same order we've been going.
Of course, we have to hold them accountable as well as all other businesses in in the economy. I'd like to actually give me, because Yael, you mentioned actually the golden rule, treat the next person the way you would like to be treated. I like to amend the golden rule, and let's say treat others and the planet the way you want to be treated. It's not just the others, it's also the planet. And this applies to business as well. And so if we apply the golden rule to our daily business, I think we're better off. And now, the respect to the global, the big corporations, yes, they can make an impact. But I think it's not necessarily the big corporations that will drive change. I think we're talking about SMEs, we're talking about small projects. And I think, well, I'm a fan of projects. You know, I think it's much easier to start a project to see how it works, and really short projects, a couple of weeks short, and learn from it, and then build networks, just like imaginal cells and then metamorphosis. So maybe, who knows, maybe we can meet in Davos in the summer, and let's start some projects. Let's do some simulations. You pick the wicked problem, and we'll see how far we get, and then we'll build a network of projects and drive the change. So again, global corporations, yes, but we can start small, and all of us can start small. And let's start with projects. We don't have an SME or big corporations. Let's meet in Davos, I think the third week of June. The summer WEF may convene, and let's run a simulation. That's a challenge.
Thank you for that. I actually teach at the University of Heidelberg in Latin America. There's Chilean and Center of Excellence funded by the DAD. And I would also ask that we consider taking this idea on the road. I can see, Thomas, why you were called the project aficionado. So,
Yes.
Devin, please. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Yale.
Just a quick thing, while Thomas is just triggered this in my mind. What I'm particularly of interest is impacting the world and trying to make it a better place, as I indicated earlier. And one of the ways to solve the problems, which are many, whether it's trafficking, poverty, homelessness, illness, is by changing the conditions that are around the world. So energy, water, access to be able to have the sources of life are critical in many of these areas. We spoke about Africa, but other areas as well. So that's kind of something that I invite anybody who's interested to be in contact with me, because this is something that we can make a difference if we are able to channel and get resources to the areas. Instead of giving handouts, people can pull themselves up if they have the tools, because the normal will of most people is to better themselves. And we just, I think it's about sharing some of the resources that are available. And we're in a global world. If we keep polluting the world, it's just going to choke our children and grandchildren. We're not going to leave much of a world to the next generation. And that's kind of a world responsibility to try to impact it, and not so much worry about, oh, China's not listening and this one's not doing it. But there's so much that can be done collectively. So that's my information on that.
Thank you.
Contact, and we can talk about it.
Thank you for that. Devin, what's your sense? Do big businesses and small businesses alike have the same responsibilities?
Well, it's tempting to say big businesses have more responsibility because of the impact they can make. But as long as there's adequate oversight into what the output, as long as, if they're shipping, they're potentially, being carbon neutral and they're working on their footprint, if there's ways to give back where everything is sort of, the output is negated, then that might be helpful on a very, very, very small scale. What I can speak to is our nonprofit, we're education based, but we plant trees. Our scholarship recipients go out and work together and plant trees in the community, so I think everyone, as long as you're responsible for the organization that you are running and the operations that you have, I think that's the element of personal responsibility. And I think there's really a hunger for socially and environmentally conscious companies. And so a lot of times, investors aren't going to be investing in large corporations that aren't taking this into account. So on a large scale, I think as long as everybody sort of moves in the direction of eco-friendly and trying to do what they can, I think that's the important question here.
Abby, let me ask you this. You grew up in Pittsburgh. You saw the, Allentown closing down. You saw the steel industries get hit. You saw the vagaries of acid rain. You saw the Steelers win, then not win. And you saw Willie Stargell and the Pirates win and then not win. You even saw Sister Sledge, and We Are Family from Pittsburgh. Just want to do a shout out to Sister Sledge. what you've seen the ugliness and the great things that come with big businesses. These are all big
Right.
businesses that folded in some cases. Do you think small businesses might be the place that we could really make the difference?
I think, well, to answer the first part of that question, I do think they should share the same amount of responsibility. But it's interesting. Where it's different is big businesses will often have a shorter leash when it comes to the optics of things, and yet a much longer leash when it comes to the actual repercussions and change involving what comes out in those optics. And then it's completely vice versa for small businesses. They will not get as much publicity around the things that they do, yet will usually face harsher consequences. If we're going to keep referencing Pittsburgh, sorry to make a sports analogy, but if Mario Lemieux makes a dirty play, a lot more people are going to be seeing the dirty play that he made. But because he's Mario Lemieux, he's probably not going to have to face as harsh a punishment because of it, versus someone who's maybe a lesser player doing the exact same thing. And that's kind of where businesses are right now, big and small.
That's a great analogy as a Canadian ice hockey fan. Absolutely. My son plays hockey, so that's why I keep going back to that. China Grant, what's your sense, please? SMEs, I mean, can they afford to do the things that are necessary to push ESG, or are they still, bootstrapping everything? And should we hold them to the same degree accountable as we do the bigger multinational enterprises?
Usually in Indian SMEs are accountable for providing the value addition, particularly for the employment generation, contribution for industrial productivity, contribution for exports, and mostly the encouraging the youth to convert as an entrepreneur. Because in India, most of the companies nowadays started giving the entrepreneurship. So therefore, generating new entrepreneurship is a new challenge. And because of this pandemic, every startups also face a lot of problem. Even they once said, the women entrepreneurs, not only in India, but other countries also face a lot of problems, many challenges, many hurdles. So this pandemic created and educated the Indian people or overseas people that how to survive, how to revive in this pandemic. And lastly, what I am sending the message to my SME sector, same message to the world, my SMEs will be reform, transform for better performance. Then only they can survive, they can revive. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And thank you everybody for your very, very thoughtful answers. We've now entered the lightning round, and I was trying to pick the question that I thought would work for 45-second answers or less as we move our way towards the bottom of the hour I don't know if you call it halfway through the hour. Yeah, bottom of the hour. That's halfway through because everybody's in different time zones. So I'm thinking I'm going to give you I want to leave on a positive note. I'd ask all the panelists, please, if you shoot me your contact information. I've been asked by several of you to stay in touch and to take this conversation on the road. So you'll, if you check the chat, you'll see my email address, or you can find me through California Western School of Law. Here's the question. Give me a good thing that came out of the pandemic, something positive. It's been terrible for the economies of countries and of people's households. And it's been terrible, just the sheer sickness and death and the devastation of families not having their loved ones around. And many of us have suffered that personally. But there have been some good things that come out of it. And we try to focus on the good things, because without those, it's really tough to keep going on. So let's do a lightning round, 45 seconds each. Thomas, once again, you start. And you know what? You get a minute just because you've been so devastated by being the first the whole time. So go right ahead with a minute.
I think most of us use the time to reflect what really matters most. And this is often of family and friends. And all other things like, the hectic, the stress, and, that was less important. But, I think the human interaction and therefore society, I think we have, at least in Germany, we have realized that this is what matters most. And this is what we have to continue working on.
Thank you for that. You're going to cede your time to Devin. Devin, you're up.
I absolutely agree with that. As technologically challenged as I personally am, I do appreciate all of the new opportunities to speak with people in any time zone. Opportunities like this and different forums and Zoom calls and all of this, and we're all connecting. We're forced to find new ways to connect to each other locally and globally, and that is, I think, a really beautiful thing because it allows for new conversations to emerge that are important, as we're speaking to important conversations to have in this day and age, to try to connect us all on some sort of common ground, which I think is really necessary, and it's been a long time coming.
Thank you for that soulful response. How about you, Abby?
Yeah, I would say we've had available long before the pandemic, but it really forced us to use it in ways that we hadn't had before. So the evolution of, kind of realizing that the workspace was a little bit obsolete for most people and most businesses into the home workspace, whether you're an actor or not. And then probably after that, I would say, despite what most people think, I love all these major motion pictures coming out directly onto my TV.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Chandra, what's your sense of some good thing or a good thing that has come out of all of this?
People learn that, importance of the technology and importance of the healthcare or medical sector. And mostly, finally, all families come together, the relatives come together. They started, asking to each other, how are you, how's your health, and what are you doing? So this is the pandemic has brought the family together. They have started, loving each other more and more and more. But I suggest the pandemic go away fast. Go Corona fast.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah.
Gail, you get the final thought, and then we'll close it up.
What an awesome responsibility. Well, first of all, I agree with Devin, Thomas, Chandrakant, and Anand. Everything they said, obviously correct. But I think since I have less choices to pick from now, since I gave my speech, I would say something really, I think, important. The great sacrifices, the healthcare workers, the frontline people who risk their lives saving the rest of us, the brilliance and dedication of the scientists and the people working to get the vaccines and treatments to us. When we work together as a world, this is a good example. The world faced a big challenge of destruction, a lethal destruction, and quickly worked hard and did things that are incredible to get the vaccines out so quickly. So together, we can help make a difference, is how I would put it.
Awesome. What a great way to end the panel. I want to thank everybody for participating. This was not easy to kind of string all this stuff together as we bootstrapped the panel, but you did so with soul, you did so with wit and with candor, and it was just a really good experience. Thank you, Thomas Julie, PhD, Devin Odgen, Abhi Sinha, Chandrakant, and Yael Fishman. Thank you all for participating. I'm Professor James Cooper from California Western School of Law, and I'm also a research fellow at the Singapore University of Social Sciences. There's the plug. You've been watching Digital Davos 2022 with an incredible intersectional and multidisciplinary panel, but two members of the SGA. So I'm hoping that we can get some credit somewhere. Thank you all. Be well. Carl, we'll send it back to you, and please stay safe all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, James. We had a wonderful conversation with you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you very much, Carl.
Ciao.
Everyone. Thank you very much. Really great panel, and we appreciate all your hard work. Well, an hour and a half. It was our longest panel. Thank you. And we will be back after a half an hour break.
Can I just say, I thought this was going to be like, oh my God, I don't think we're going to be able to fill it all. We could keep going. So that's a sign of a good panel. So
Yeah.
thank you, Carl, for bringing everybody together, and to all the panelists. This was great. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best. Good night. Thank you. Be safe.
Good morning.